Welcome, everyone, to another week of the Customer Success Show. I'm Brad Davis, your host today, founder of Success Panda. And today we are talking about scaled customer success. This is part two, back-to-back weeks. We're going to have a new panel today. Real quick before we bring on our panelists, I just want to say that Success Panda continues to add more features, and that if you have not created an account, go to successpanda.io to whether you're looking for mentees, mentors, mock interviews, customers, coaches, communities. We're aggregating all the things in customer success on the site. So if you haven't checked it out, feel free to stop by. So without further ado, let's bring on our panel. We have Stacy, Haneen, and Scott joining us today. Everyone want to say hi?
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome. Well, let's do a quick round robin of intros. So I got on my screen, I got Stacy, Haneen, then Scott. So we'll go in that order. You want to just give us a quick intro and tell us about yourself?
Sure. So I got the top right corner, I guess.
Yep.
So great to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Brad. I am Stacy Cheney. Just a bit of background. I've been in the tech world for about 15 plus years. Majority of my career has been in this space. Actually starting in marketing, which has been an interesting skill set with this digital scaled motion. But for the past 6-7 years or so, have been very focused on this motion. So building out digital and scaled customer success programs and digital experience at a few different companies from the start. And then most recently have spent almost a year, just coming up on a year in November, building out digital CS at Informatica. And then we are supposed to add a fun fact. So for me, between this job and having 3 little girls under the age of 6, my time is very limited, but do lots of fun things with them outdoors. We're in Idaho, but I do like to have a 30-45 minute window between work and pickup, where I like to have an at-home CrossFit workout. So that's the only 30 minutes in my day where no one needs anything from me. So that's what I do for fun between all the other activities with the family. So happy to be here.
Wow. I mean, I have 4 kids between 11 and 4, so I'm right there with you. Like,
got it.
It is never a dull moment. So
yes,
yeah.
There's no me time in this world.
Yeah. Thanks, Stacy, for that intro. Go ahead, Haneen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haneen Shuman. Fun fact, I'll start with that first. This is the first time I do this as a live session on LinkedIn, so a bit nervous, but hopefully it goes well. I'm Vice President of Customer Success at Eptura, and I've been doing customer success for probably like 15 years. Always been in the tech world, even before customer success, mostly was focused on engineering services and such. And I'm based in Winnipeg, Canada.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Thanks for that. Go ahead, Scott.
Hi, Scott Wilder, based in San Francisco, a native New Yorker, though. So tell folks I got a lot of New York inside me and California on the outside of me. I just actually left Clary, where I was managing their digital success and self-serve. Before that, similar to Stacy, I was in the marketing world, where I managed customer engagement and digital marketing for HubSpot, Marketo, and Intuit. So a number of places like that. But I moved into I wasn't really at Clary in customer success. We supported customer success a lot as well as with other teams. And we reported up to the chief customer officer.
What's your fun thing you like to do, Scott?
Oh, I'm big on baseball and coach baseball a lot, and also part of a kids travel baseball team. So I'm a chauffeur by night.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I'm sure none of us can relate to that, times and seasons. No, that's awesome. Are you a Giants fan? Are you San Francisco, or are you a New York fan? I'm just curious.
I'm a New York fan. I'm a Yankees fan.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, they're having a good season.
I do like the Oakland A's. I'm very upset that they're moving to Sacramento and then Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan, so there's not much to talk about there. But We all choose our pain in life. All right. So let's go ahead and so this is really this is a really popular topic. Like, so I've been doing these calls every Friday, and we do different calls, and then we have our next month panel all lined up for every month. And we routinely get, hey, let's talk about scaled and digital customer success, right? And so I think it's important to have like definition of terms, because that's kind of a unique thing. Everyone kind of does it differently. And we had our first panel last week, which was a great discussion, which if you haven't watched that, we do have a YouTube channel at Success Panda. It's just look Success Panda up on YouTube and you can watch that replay. But it was really interesting. And this is always a super interesting topic because companies just are at it from different places, right? So first question, and we'll talk about this, and we'll just have, Stacy, Haneen, then Scott give us about like, I don't know, 2 to 3 minute response, and then we can keep it conversational until we move on and beat this question to a dead horse here. But let's bring up the first question, which is, tell us about how does your company do scaled CS? What does that mean within your company?
Sure, I can start that off. And it's interesting because, having done this at a few different companies, even within those companies, it's all been a little bit different strategy and methodology. So, and it's perfect timing because we're actually putting together kind of our internal walking deck on what this is. So how I like to describe it, kind of like the one-line elevator pitch for it is, for us, it's really a data-driven methodology for creating customer value at scale. Regardless of segmentation, regardless of channel, that's what we're trying to do holistically. And then for how we do it here, it's kind of 2 different pillars, and it goes back to, I think this is the hot kind of topic in digital CS is or phrase. It's not a segment, it's a strategy, which I agree to an extent. I think it can be both. I think obviously this shouldn't be relegated to just the low touch, but it can also be both. So that's kind of what it looks like here, where we have a digital CX motion, so driving that automation, customer journey development. How do we, have a seamless digital thread across the customer's experience? We have that arm of it, but we also here own a book of business that is kind of that lower touch, don't have an assigned CSM. How do we leverage all of this digital goodness with that specific segment? So we have a book of business that we're mitigating churn, driving expansion in the same ways we would with any other CS segment. So that's kind of what scaled CS looks like here at Informatica.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. I have some follow-up questions, but let Haneen go.
Sure. It's interesting because I have a little bit different approach on it, and it's tied also to how our organization came together to be. So for those that don't know, Eptura used to be 9 different companies, and we brought 9 companies together. And a lot of these companies were startup growth companies, and you can imagine that in these companies, all customers had like direct interactions with everyone in that startup. And part of the strategy that we put in place together to bring customer success together for all these companies is how we can approach that at scale and mainly bring consistency to all customers, irrespective of which tier they are. Just like Stacy said, we also have tiers, and we have accounts where there's assigned CS and accounts that don't have assigned CS. But the main focus that we have been putting on for the scaled CS motion is to be able to foundationally bring our systems and processes so that we can start to serve the customers with the one-to-many touches and interactions without having to have one human being for every single thing the customer needs to be done. And a lot of it is foundations in the systems, in the process. We've put a team together who I've seen all of them are here in the show and enjoying their show, to start to think about building that process and also making sure that we can support the customers that are in the tier that doesn't have a dedicated CSM talking to them. I think the other piece to this from our perspective is also just being able to reach out to customers with new information, and also mitigate risks as they come up without depending on the customer to reach out to us. So a lot of the effort being put is around how we can use usage data, system data to drive good behavior in our customer base across multiple products.
Awesome. Thanks, Haneen. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I look at it as, first of all, what we do here is, again, as I said earlier, we're not just supporting customer success, we're supporting professional services, marketing, as well as support. So I look at it as using digital automation and data to be customer first. And so that really means, like, how do you help the customers find the information they need to get the answer they want or the information they want, as well as helping internal groups achieve operational efficiency. At Clari, digital supports all parts of the business, but so again, I think we've talked a lot about in the conversations about how digital success is not one segment, it's multiple segments, but there's degrees in terms of how they help multiple segments. So there's that complete self-serve group, or that you're going to be 100% high tech, high touch. And then in the scaled group, it might be like 20% human, 80% digital or oriented. So working really closely with that scaled group to figure out how they can be efficient and handle many accounts at once. And then for your enterprise, or for those top, say 50, it depends on the company, but for your top enterprise oriented customers, then it's going to be less digital. So digital is probably doing more to support the customer success team, both in terms of their external plays as well as internal efficiencies.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Scott. So I just want to bring a follow-up here that you're supporting, professional services support. Who with your experience, who is there one single team or whether it's customer success, but who owns the messaging to the customer? So like, who at the end of the day is looking at, here's our customer, and they receive 20 emails perhaps per week, because if marketing's sending some, CS is sending some, sales is sending some, like, how do we make sure that we're not ruining the experience by spamming them all the time?
Yeah, I mean, today the majority of digital success is under customer success. I believe that's going to evolve and change and be more reporting to like the chief customer officer. In terms of like the guardrails when it comes to graphics, messaging, and things like that, we basically are establishing that from a digital perspective, but we have a lot of guidance from the marketing team. So we came up with this umbrella brand called the Clari Circle, which is really all digital inbound plays and outbound plays. So inbound meaning like education, in product, etc., and then outbound meaning like email and chat. And we worked really closely with the marketing team to come up with that umbrella statement. And then we also work with the marketing team at a product level, because they're establishing the positioning of the product. So, a good example is of, if there's a new product release or whatever, we basically sit down with the product marketing team and say, this is like a list of things that we can do to support different groups internally. Can you review that? Can you let us know what the right messaging is for that? And you also want to do that as well, because if we're in customer success and we're sending out, let's say, email, for example, we know marketing is also sending out email. So it's really important to be synced up. Events is another great example. Like, we might do office hours, we might do other, a LinkedIn Live or whatever, but you really need to be coordinated with other teams, such as marketing, that are doing emails and events.
Right. Ladies, do you have any comments, or you have input about how to collaborate with our internal stakeholders to make sure we're not spamming our customers?
Yeah, definitely. And I should add, we're actually similar to Scott as well. So we do digital across all of what we call our CA and R organization. So doing support communications, starting to get into like professional services and others. So it's in addition to customer success. But to that point, I think, there's definitely has to be some synchronization between other departments. One of the things that I've done at other companies in here is kind of doing that audit, at a previous company, we found out that the customer is getting welcomed like 8 times, which is not a great customer experience. So, they're getting a welcome from training and a welcome from the community, and like, stop welcoming me, help me, So that's one, I think, really important aspect is, do that audit so from the customer's perspective to see how much they get.
We have the
And
welcome
then-
emails down, Stacey. We're A+. Welcome
Now it's
emails.
everything else.
On the execution, jump in the
You're
queue.
right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing that helps with that is by getting all of these teams into one room and developing what that best practice customer journey is. You're going to figure out what does a customer need to know at each point and who kind of takes the lead at which point, where it makes the most sense. And then you're all on the same page. So what a customer hears when they're a prospect, the messaging and content and what they talk about a product and what the value is consistent after they've purchased. You're still hearing the same thing. So I think taking the time to get everybody on the same page before you start to build things, I think is really critical.
Yeah, and you work at a big company, Informatica is a big company. That cannot be a small thing, right? I mean, how many teams message the customer at any one point in Informatica? I'm sure it's more than one.
Well, and you kind of have to, it's like groundhogs that keep popping up everywhere too, of a communication you didn't know about. So
Yeah.
Lots of communication and collaboration is important.
Cool. What do you think, Henning?
I have a similar challenge, less about like the size of the company and more about, again, going back to, we had 3 or 4 different companies that went through so many integrations and mergers, and everyone was doing things in a different way. And yes, a lot of people were sending pretty much the same message to the customer base, but from different teams. So the Scaled CS team, we have a CX ops team that basically manages operations across like PS, CS, support, and all of that. But the Scaled CS team's main like goal or mission is to make sure that we have a coordination across all of the departments to make sure that there's like one way of approaching, the best way to approach customers at scale, basically. So we do a lot of collaboration with AR, for example, a lot of integration, coordination with support. Now we're also focusing more with the implementation teams on how we can kind of like help the customers after they finish their implementation with the touch that would help them just make sure that they are getting to success. And our approach was, okay, we have so many, because I'm sure like everyone has a lot of problems on like which one you start with first. And it's like, which one is the most painful to the customer is the one that we hit first, and then we go to the next one. Some of it is more painful for our internal departments, but we always are starting with what's the most painful for the customer, because that's what's driving the majority of our churn in the Scaled tier.
Okay, good. So similar, we're going to go on to the next question here, but it's it's adjacent to what we've just been talking about. And before we get to the question, we do have a lot of people that will watch this replay, or people who are watching right now live, who will just say are maybe first time, directors or managers, or people that are VPs, people that are trying to, or even other founders who are trying to figure out what should scaled customer success look like, and kind of what tools we use. And so that's going to kind of be the next question is, let's talk about the tech stack, what technologies you use to help scale your program. Like if you have a specific tool, feel free to shout them out. If it's a amalgamation of tools, feel free to get into that too. But Scott, we'll start with you. What's a tech stack that people are using these days around your circle?
Yeah, so for LMS University, there's obviously Docebo, there's Thinkific, there's Skilljar. We use Docebo. For community, you have Insight Insighted, you have Higher Logic, Vanilla. And then for your knowledge base and case deflection and cases, you have Salesforce. You can use Zendesk as well. For email, we actually used Gainsight as well as Groove, which is a product we have.
Mhm.
You can also use Marketo, so the marketing team uses Marketo. For integrations, we use Tableau. We worked with a company called Grazidi that helped us build our chatbot, and also we built federated search with our chatbot, and the two kind of work together. So that's why we went with them. There's a company called Berry, which Qualtrics uses, which I think is really doing great work in terms of chat. And then we also use Microsoft Azure for our chat as well. So as we, I think a big thing is when you're doing, it's interesting because for our external facing chat, we're integrating multiple content platforms, which I just mentioned, as well as multiple internal systems like Gainsight and CR and Salesforce, so that we can personalize the experience more. But when it comes to really helping your team do analysis on your, you can use Microsoft Azure where you have your own license. But if you're going to go out into the wild and use ChatGPT and stuff like that, and just a reminder to strip out any customer-facing information. So,
Gotcha. Well, that's quite a few technologies. So that's do you have to be like expert in all those? Are you
I don't think you have to. We have domain experts, but I tend to be more. I like to think I'm more comfortable with technology than a lot of folks in this role. So I really do get under the hood for everything, and do, I used to be a Salesforce admin, for example, so I'm pretty familiar with how that works. I worked at Marketo, so maybe it's I get under the hood because I worked at a lot of these companies,
right?
So I understand how they work, for example.
Gotcha. Awesome. What do you think, Stacy? What's your tech stack looking like, and are you an expert in all of them?
No. Yeah, it's interesting here because with the kind of the benefit of Informatica, it's kind of two parts. Where one, we have very, very intelligent folks here. Where when you have that conversation of build versus buy, like sometimes the build is actually better than what's out there. So a lot of the tools that we leverage are built in-house. And the other piece of it is because we're a cloud data management company, we kind of have to drink our own Kool-Aid too, where if we're going to bring in new technology, it has to fit with what we already have. Because, like we have our own methodology. We don't want to add more data silos, new data technology, new data processes. It has to all work together. So from kind of those two pillars that I talked about, from like the digital CX side versus the digital segment side, some key tools that we use from like the digital CX automation, things like that. Here we are a Salesforce suite. So we just are implementing things like Marketing Cloud. That's our communication tool. We're just now implementing or leveraging the right data into Data Cloud to then facilitate all of those journeys. And one really cool thing that we're starting is, because all that data is coming from one place, we are starting to get to that omni-channel experience where what's happening in the product with guides or pop-ups or whatever's happening there is all fed from the same data source. So it links with what's happening in email. So if they close out of something, we can send an email. If they read an email of interest, we can have it pop up in the product. So starting to really build out that omni-channel experience. And then because we manage that book of business, we have all these really great internal tools for managing that scaled motion. So two really quick ones. We have this great tool called Cassini that's built in-house. This is kind of our customer 360 view, but it uses a lot of AI to generate, executive summaries. We have a prioritized view, leveraging a ton of different touch points across the product or across the customer base to see, when we need to have a human engaged, where are we going to spend most of our time, because we can't touch every single customer. So we have Cassini that we leverage for our scaled motion. And then one other tool is what we call, that's built internally, is called Spectrum. This is also a Gen AI tool. And what it's doing is it's leveraging a ton of different points to see what is like their churn propensity, who's like a high probability renewal versus the high value rescue versus the low value rescue. So our team can really be targeted on who we can reach out to and when and why. So we can look out 3-4 quarters ahead on, hey, this person turned to a high value rescue. Let's use our human efforts there. And then we'll eventually use that as ways so we can communicate with a customer as well if they kind of fall off that happy path. So here it's kind of, like I said, the buy piece of it is kind of leveraging all the data and technology to work together. And then obviously the build piece of it is leveraging a lot of great internal technology that, not to toot our own horn, but we just actually won, we found out a couple days ago, won TSA award for Spectrum, which is really exciting. So very cool folks here.
See, the trouble with the name Spectrum, Stacy, is you named it after one of the loathsome internet provider companies that exists. So I'm sure it works great. It probably works better than the actual Spectrum internet provider because, not to make a spoiler, but their internet goes out half the time. But okay.
No, more about the light fracturing data, how it's fed. That was not Pink Floyd or anything.
But yeah, that is super interesting. Just a real quick follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
Out of all your channels, what seems to be popular with your customers? What channel are they choosing to engage the most on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're just, kicking part of this off. We're at the early days of this communication channels. However, one thing, it kind of depends on the persona that we're learning as well. So we have access to all of our end users. Majority of those folks are going to be ones that would better receive, communications through the product. That's where they are day in, day out. They're probably going to be the folks that are less so reading their emails. But then vice versa, if we're sending things like digital QBRs or ROI reports, those are more going to business stakeholders. We're leveraging those contacts more from things like Salesforce. Those are primarily email because those folks aren't going to the, into the product every single day. So it really depends on kind of, who we're reaching out to and why.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention, sorry to interrupt. So Stacy mentioned in product. So I think that's a really key skill to have when you're doing digital success. So we use Pendo, but I think, it's just more and more DS folks really should focus on like that in-product play and how do you use that to provide the information to folks and to nudge them along in the product, almost like a PLG play.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I've used Pendo before. It's great for that. Cool. Henning, what are you using? What tech stack? And then are you an expert in all of it?
Yeah, not an expert in all of it. I know what it needs to do and how to do it, but I leave it for the experts internally to run the stack. I can think about stack as our stack as like two groups. One is more related internally for our teams to know what's the next steps they need to take, and one is the channel of communication with these users. Like Stacy was talking, which users we want to hit in the app versus in an email versus in a marketing email, like for example, through the marketing department. So we use internally a tool for customer success called PlanHat. And PlanHat is kind of our CS tool. It's kind of like our internal system of customer success. So through it, we'd be able to see usage analysis of the health score, automate our ability to assess the risks and all of that on the accounts. And we also use it for automating communication out to customers, whether through email communication or other plays that the scale team needs to do on a specific cohort of customers. When we get to communicating with the customers, we use, depending on the product that is in play, we use Intercom or Pendo, mainly for the inbound communication in the product to reach out the users as they are using our products. We've also this year started using Synthesia as an AI avatar-based kind of like videos that we create, updates. Stacy, you referred to that, like a digital EBR or QBR and updates that goes to executives that don't want to sit on a 1 hour EBR with us, but they want like their 3-4 minute update on the return on investment they're having from our tools. Those are kind of like the 4 big ones that Scale CS uses. We of course have, like for support, we have the Customer Hub built in using Salesforce Service Cloud, like just a system that the customers can go and self-serve, open their cases, review their cases with the support team or with the PS team. And we also have the channels through the marketing team, whether it's Marketo or our websites, putting information for customers on there. So I feel like all 3 of us have kind of like very similar goals and like probably a lot of overlap on the tools. But yeah, that's our stack.
Gotcha. So something that Scott said that I just want to make a follow-up question, then we'll move on to the next question, is he brought up that there's certain skills, right? That, let's just say a person who wants to be an IC and come work on your team. Scott mentioned like, hey, knowing how to work with in-app tools is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but that's what I heard. Working with in-app tools, knowing how like in-app communication works is an important skill. Because there's a lot of people who are either job seekers or want to get into scaled or digital customer success. So in a minute or so, like if you had to give people one piece of feedback of a skill that they could use to really get into scaled CS, what would you say? Whoever wants to go first can just shoot.
I can go first. For me, because we went from a company that had no CX ops, no scaled CS, to a company that has both, and we elected some people from customer success, support, MPS to join these new functions. The main thing that we looked at is people that are curious on playing around with the new technology, figuring it out, and also at the same time have had customer service or customer facing roles because they understand the impact of a specific approach or a communication to customers. So if someone has these two skills and enjoy doing these two skills, kind of like putting themselves in the shoes of the customer, not scared of looking at a new tool, working through it, figuring out how it works, I feel like they would really enjoy a job in scaled CS or in ops in general.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. In Intuit, where I worked, they had the CQ, the curiosity quotient, and so that's something that they really looked at a lot. I like the customer-facing roles. I will say, when it comes to digital success, when I look at job descriptions and things like that, people are looking for the majority are looking for people with customer success experience. However, like Stacy, I think there's a lot of value in people who have that marketing experience. Mm-hmm. I think the second thing is, if you're going to be manager, senior manager, and maybe even director, is having one or two superpowers on whether it's really understanding in product, whether it's being, the master of understanding how education works, things like that. And then I think finally, there has to be somebody who really understands how all these integrations work together from a data perspective, et cetera. And that might be, the director, might be, the operations person, things like that.
Interesting. Yep. Cool.
Yeah, I kind of echo everyone's sentiments. I think that's kind of the digital CS hill I'll die on, that that digital CS isn't your most junior CSM. That's like nails on a chalkboard, because I don't think it is. I think it's a completely different skill set. I think you can get benefit from somebody that's been a CSM before and knows that customer facing piece and has heard the pain points directly from a customer. I think that's invaluable. But I agree kind of with both what Haneen and Scott both said, is I think it takes that expertise, but also having an idea of how to do digital. What do those channels look like? What does engagement look like? How do you work with a customer that's beyond just, picking up a phone? And then, like Scott said, having an understanding of data. So the data and operations piece, if you don't have a robust, CS ops team that you partner with, having somebody in-house that understands and can look at, here's this trend that's happening here, here's how we can possibly mitigate. Hey, I see this as an issue. I think it takes a more data and technology mindset than I think the more personal customer facing piece. So.
Yeah, no, I would say if I had to chime in myself, about this, I like everything that was contributed from the panel, but I think you want to make sure that you're an expert communicator. And what I mean by that is like doing the blocking and tackling of like, what is good copy in an email?
Yeah.
Or, am I clear in my writing and not only my speech? Because it's one thing if you're just a CSM and you're dealing on a one-to-one basis. Scott's my customer. I'm speaking to him. He's like, oh, you're great at explaining, the value and the ROI and all the things. Well, I think it was you, Stacy, you said like generally the people that are hired into these roles, they're not the most junior. You have to have experience to get into them, because the last thing you want to do is take someone who, let's just say, isn't doing well and then allow them to talk to that many more customers, right? You just want to make sure that the person that you have who is either coming up with the copy or the content or making decisions a lot of times about when you're going from one to many and speaking to customers, right, that they have that superpower. They definitely know what they're doing, because I don't know if any of you have ever been in an organization before where something got sent out by accident or it was like the wrong thing. I won't confirm or deny that it's been me once or twice, but let's just say it's embarrassing, right, when you have to like send that follow-up email and learn from that situation. But so you want to kind of reduce that,
Yeah,
situation.
I agree with you, Brad. And it's kind of like a mindset. It's a different mindset when someone is doing a one-to-one versus someone that's thinking of, I need to hit this for like 1,000 customers. And these 1,000 customers might have different needs, different kind of like priorities. So whatever message that's going out or an outreach that's going out to more like that large size cohort, it needs to, in my mind, like it needs to be simple, easy to understand, very actionable, straight to the point. Whereas in our one-on-one interactions, and one-on-one CSM tend to probably be not that stuff, right? Because he wants to come across as having a lot of value and a lot of details, right? Which is not what you want to have in a one-to-many interaction.
Yeah, and it still shocks me, because as someone who, especially on my founder journey, like building Success Panda and receiving automated and then personal emails, just the basic blocking and tackling of like email subject line, like making it very clear.
Absolutely.
The actual copy of the email. I hate long emails, by the way. If you send me a DM on LinkedIn or whatever and it's super long, I'm not going to read it. I'm sorry. I'm just not. And then with a clear like CTA, right, where it's just sometimes I still get emails where it's like, okay, what is the call to action here? And to me, it's like, can we do the basic things before we get on to like, the 200 IQ play stuff of communicating. So that was all good stuff. So let's move on to our next question, and probably it'll be our last one. But we have our panel. You're all seasoned pros at this, and so there's a lot of people who want to. It's almost, you can think of this as like free consulting. You're stepping into the consulting shoes for the next 10 minutes of all of those like me who have worked at Series A companies who, let's say, had to figure it out and wish we would have had access to people like you to ask you about all the things. So let's talk about if you were to start from scratch in building a CS program, how would you go about it? Because there's a lot of people listening who are either haven't started yet or in early stages of building a scaled CS program, and then help them out. Give them, if they're right in the beginning, just help them out, avoid pitfalls or whatever piece of advice that you would say you would want to do. So I'll just open that up. Whoever wants to go first, just chime right in.
Yeah, I would. So when I was at Intuit, we used customer-driven innovation as a process a lot, consisting of understanding, identify, and then experiment. So understanding, I would first identify which segments of customers you want to focus on first and spend time with them and understand the jobs that need to be done, their pain points. And since we've talked a lot about technology, how do they like to learn? Are they a community person? Are they an end product person? Then I would next, and that's the understand, identify, is really think about what the gaps are today in terms of how you communicate with them. Mm-hmm. And then I would experiment with one channel. Just start with one simple channel. A lot of people like to start with email. You could do events or whatever, and experiment with it, right? So you're picking a segment, 1-2 segments. Say you're going to do events, webinars. You can do some A/B testing if you want in that as well, and then slowly learn from that and roll out things. I will say most people focus on the once they talk to customers to identify a program, they stop talking to them about identifying the program. So have that co-develop, co-pilot mindset where you're
Yeah.
constantly having that feedback loop with them. So
you're saying, Scott, that if I'm your customer and I say, hey, Scott, I want to communicate through email, you say, great, I'll see you in a year or two. We'll check. Yeah. So that's not the right approach, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think when you're co-piloting with them and developing with them, Tenemos, I think Tenemos does a great job of this. They actually take their campaigns and they run a few examples of them. They run their example of their campaigns by a few customers before they roll it out. So that's all part of that experiment phase. So I guess net is, using that customer-driven innovation framework, starting with a simple channel first, or a channel and starting simple, and to your point, setting the right expectations, and then finally using that feedback loop that you're constantly checking in, not just on the offer, but also how you're communicating with them. Did this, to your point, did this email resonate with you? Is there things, there's no reason why you can't co-pilot, co-design with your customers.
Well, Scott, you might have listened to some of my previous content because you said all my favorite words about the frameworks and jobs to be done. So you're getting invited back has just skyrocketed, and so we're gonna talk. No, but yeah, no, I totally agree. So that was great input. Haneen, Stacy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I actually jotted this down. I was wanted to think about it in advance. It's actually very similar to what Scott was saying. I think if you're just starting out, like I mentioned, kind of trying to figure out that collaboration between other departments, I still think that there's value in taking a pause to figure out what that best case journey is. And I think there's also value in when you do that, don't just do it for the people that are post-sale. Get marketing in there, get R&D in there, get support in there, product, like get everyone in the room to decide what that best case looks like from end to end, because then that becomes the foundation of everything you do after that. Because then you can start to see, okay, now you have what that best practice is, regardless of segment, regardless of how they interact with us. Here's the best practice of how you execute on this, service or business outcome, for example. And then you can figure out, okay, like you said, where are the pain points? Identifying, like, what are you hearing from churn reasons? What are you getting from support cases? Like, where are the points that we could use as first use cases? And then start, like Scott was saying, what are the use cases you can do that are kind of high impact, but I would say low-ish effort. There's always going to be effort, especially if this is the first time you're starting this out and you have to put all the technology and pieces together. But start small, that you can have a high impact and get a quick win. I think that's the biggest advice that I can give people if you're just starting this out, is get that quick win, because then you can go back to all of those people that were in that room to build that journey and say, hey, this in-product thing worked, or hey, this event worked. Let's keep going. Because I think that's, if you do that journey and you take all that time to do it, and you don't see results for 6, 9, 12 months, it's going to be really hard to come back to them and be like, hey, let's do the next phase of use cases. And then, like Scott was saying, test and iterate. Like, I have it on a sticky note on my computer that says, what is it? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. As a recovering perfectionist, that's very hard. But get something out, like, especially if you have nothing out, something is better than nothing that you've taken an educated, approach to. Just getting something out and finding out, like, hey, nobody reads our emails. Okay, great. Don't go build the whole journey via email, because you just wasted all that time. Like, test, iterate, like you said, get feedback, and then go again. Like, those would be build the journey, find the pain points, test and iterate, and then build from there.
Yeah, as someone who's probably coming from the opposite side of, like, I need to become more of a perfectionist,
We need to meet in the middle.
Yeah, I was like, I need to have a post-it note. It's like, care about what others think of you. It's like, okay.
I need the careless version of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's super. I think it's very shrewd advice. Just when you said, hey, you need to get quick wins. Wherever you're at, whatever company you're in, it's always, especially when you're doing new initiatives, right? People want to see that quick win. And not only that, if you're a new leader and you're coming in, like, try to get that quick win. It's great advice.
Yeah, I think that the quick win is also really important for internal street cred. So credibility inside the company, right? especially when you're new, you need some wins, right away. Or, if you have naysayers, they can see that, you put some points on the board.
I call them haters, but that's just like I said. Care more about it. Go ahead, Haneen. What do you think?
So my take on this is a little bit different, just because I manage all customer success, not just scaled customer success in an organization. And I personally have started scaled CS for different reasons in different stages of the company I'm at. I would start first with, what's the goal of building a scaled CS program in your organization? Is it because people are asking you to do more with less, or just what you have? So now you need to go cover more customers with the same resources that you have. Or is it because the goal is you want to advance cross-selling and growth, or increase updates and knowledge and adoption in a product where you're having a lot of innovation happening in it? So if your goal is any of these, you would approach it a little bit differently in where you start. I can tell you from what we've done in the last year. Again, going just back to, you have multiple companies coming together, you're going through mergers, integrations, all of that. The main start for a scaled customer success organization is, first of all, know the goal, but second is also know what are the minimum foundation you need, so that you can get to the point where, when you are starting to send an outreach, that you will get results out of it. And I mean by that, do you have the right contacts in your systems? Because you can build a lot of nice journeys that goes out, but if your contact management process is not on point, all of that are going to customers or contacts that are no longer at your customers, then your win is going to be hard to get to, right? So we start with the systems and the foundations. And then I'm a big fan of automation, but not as a first step of things. Right. So before we go crazy on building very advanced automation and journey out there, I always ask my team to show me that this works with a manual effort, not a huge manual effort. Obviously, they will do some automation to it, but let's start with a minimal automation that we can prove that this works for 100 customer cohort and the response makes sense. And that's the approach that the team had for our avatar-based updates. We picked up one product, we picked up a small cohort of customers, we built a journey around it. And once we proved the concept and have, got everyone excited in the company about it, put it on your, company town hall, let them see it. I think people really like to see all the advanced digital stuff that are happening. And then you can go and roll out, of course, with the collaboration from customer marketing, the ops team, and all of that. And I think the step-by-step going up to a full-scaled program would be a good approach to it.
Yeah, I really like a lot what you said. And I like how you started out when you said that you're a little different. And that's the beauty of having a panel, because we want different. We want different perspectives, and companies are formed and organized very differently. Something that you said where you just talked about automation is not the good first step. I don't know if you've ever been a part of an organization that might have, the last thing you want to do is automate a task that shouldn't be done, or is at worst actually counterproductive.
Should not be done.
Yeah, it's counterproductive to your customer journey, right? I don't know, sending 4 welcome emails from 4 different departments. I mean, it's just,
And sometimes people do that, right? Where when something is painful, they think that the answer for that is to automate it. And always the question that should be asked is, if it's that painful, should it even have to happen? Or should we think about not having that outreach and that contact with the customer this way? Should we think about it differently? I'll give a good example on that. For example, for forecasting, when you have to forecast upcoming renewal results, but you don't have a human that can do that forecasting on an individual account level, you can start by going crazy on automation on I'm going to look at how many invoices, do they have, bad invoices? Are they using the product? Are they responding to our emails? You can go and do all of that. But before you do it, you kind of have to take a step back and prove that looking at these 3 criteria is the right thing that is leading to the churn results that we are having, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. And especially when if you're ever hired in and you're going into a new organization and you're looking at what I would call the comprehensive digital customer journey, or if it's built in, sometimes you'll see the in-person or the human journey as well that's overlapped on the digital one. And whoever, people that have watched my content before know I have this framework called APP, Assets, Process, People, Policy. And the whole point of like policies is like, it's your leader's job to make sure that there's clarity on what are the policies, what are the rules of the game, why does this exist? And I think when you go into a new position, you want to make sure that you understand why is this thing here, right? And if there's not a clear policy, there's not a clear explanation. And I think, Haneen, like you said, like maybe this can be eliminated. And sometimes that can be hard internally because maybe that was someone's idea and they're kind of married to it, but you cross that bridge when you get there. But I like also that you said you got to celebrate the wins. And I think that's like with your own internal team, you built a new process. Like I used to, I'll just do this quick tangent on, I used to build custom furniture, like as a side thing back in the day where I build farmhouse tables. And it was so interesting because I would build this table and I'd take it to their house and they'd be like, this is amazing. Thank you, Brad. It's beautiful. It's everything I ever wanted. And they're just gushing on me. They're like, okay, you bring your family next Sunday. You're going to come eat, with us and we're going to celebrate, building this. And then you might work for a company and it's like, hey, I built this whole customer journey. And they're like, oh, cool. What's next? I mean, it's just,
there's no dinner in it for you.
Yeah. I mean, there's not going to be any dinner, but it's just like, so I'm really big on celebrating, and I have this whole thing where I just tell managers to do the free things well. And I won't go down that road.
If you think about your example, Brad, it's like the table is such a tangible thing that people, like the person that you're giving to, they can touch. Whereas a lot of what Scaled CS does is a lot in the background. So we as leaders have to think of how we bring it to the front so that people see the impact of it. And that could be as simple as sharing some stats on the town hall. It could be, sometimes like really cool thing can be just testimonies from customers that had this contact with the journey that we've built and they gave us like a good feedback on it. I feel like just making it tangible for people goes a long way.
Great advice. So we're here at time and it was a great panel. Let's Stacy, Haneen, Scott, where can people find more about you? Where can they reach out to you?
You can always find me on
LinkedIn. Yeah, it's probably everyone. I would say LinkedIn is best.
Same for me.
You can just open up your window and shout. I'll hear it. No, LinkedIn is really the best place. I mean, that's where everybody's going these days to, contact each other, share best practices, etc. So.
Yeah, cool. Until Success Panda one day takes over with our new architecture, and then I will be at the top of the mountain. Okay, that's a but until then, yeah, LinkedIn's always great. So Scott, Haneen, Stacy, thanks for coming. It was fun. Thanks for sharing your insights. I know that I always learn something every time I talk to a new panel, and I'm sure a lot of people will learn a lot of things too. So let's go ahead and sign off. Everyone that's watching, thanks for watching. Feel free. This will be on our YouTube channel at Success Panda. And then everyone have a great weekend. And panel, thanks for coming.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
See you guys.
Take care.
Bye. All right.